Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Making Spaces podcast, a podcast about making space both literally and figuratively for yourself and others. I'm one of the hosts, Sarah, and this is
the other co-host, Josie.
Today, we have two healthcare professionals. I'm going to use the word professionals. I'm excited to introduce to you two. One is a nurse, one is a CNA on the way to becoming a nurse during the time of COVID, but they're also people who happen to be two of my best friends. And so it has been really cool to watch them make space. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they ended up in this industry. You know, they went straight from college into the dream job folks. And so we're going to talk about what it looks like to make space for our dreams. I'll say a little later in life. Is that a good way of saying it? Mm-hmm. So this is John Keeling and Crystal Steckel. And I am going to open up by asking Crystal first, because once you get John going, it's hard to wrangle him back in. Where is one of your favorite spaces and why?
One of my favorite spaces. This is going to be kind of an odd one. Well, at first I was going to say Gidget.
That's my Airstream.
But it's not quite my favorite space just yet.
I was going to say, because you couldn't answer the why part.
It will be. No. I would say it trails. I know that sounds weird. That's not like an indoor space, but it's, it's my space. And why? It's because, I don't know, I didn't grow up like an outdoorsy person. I didn't really discover the outdoors until I was well into adulthood. And I just feel like trails, like running and hiking and all the things that you can do on trails is like, feels like freedom and feels like, connection to God and feels like connection to myself. So yeah, it's just a place for me to connect and to feel freedom. Freedom is like a real important thing for me. Like I need space. And so the outdoors, there's plenty of it. So I think that's why.
That's interesting, especially like Josie also grew up in a Latino family and the experience of like, she loves the outdoors, but I love her statement of like, I want it to be like, I'm going to a destination, like, you know, less the journey, more the, what are we doing here in this space? So it's fun to hear people who discover even the outdoors later on.
Well, I always say that brown people do outdoors in a general way. We don't backpack. We don't climb mountains. We don't want to go on the top of Everest. Just, you know, the baseline.
Well, Crystal stepped out of that one. She's one of these crazy climbers and all that sort of stuff. So she took it in the opposite direction. All right. So John, what is one of your favorite spaces and why? And by the way, the outdoors one isn't that weird. If you listen back to a bunch of episodes, a lot of people say things outside of like a space.
Nice.
Well, then fine. I'm not going to say the outdoors, even though I like them. They're real nice.
What's your favorite space? One of your, it doesn't have to be your favorite, just one of.
One of them. Like the one that stands out is Musée d'Orsay in Paris. When I lived there, that was my spot.
I'm not laughing. I'm like, wow, that was unexpected.
It's bougie, whatever.
I'm bougie. I'm very bougie.
Now, I don't know if you know John, but he is fancy.
He's a fancy man. Part of the story is that John lived in Paris when he was playing professional basketball. And so for those who are not watching this on YouTube, John is, he's a big man. He's 6'9".
Not that people on YouTube could even see how tall I am. It doesn't.
No, you're seated as well. Yeah. Maybe the size of your hands, like a puppy, they could figure out your size. So John, why that area? Why so fancy? Why that museum?
That museum, it was a very tranquil, calm place in a very chaotic city. That was awesome. Chaotic. It was amazing. I love soaking it in. There was something about the way the light entered it. It was quiet. There was an energy about it though. And then Impressionist art. So, and it's an old train station. So it's just a beautiful building. The architecture, everything's beautiful about it. And I used to go there once a week and just hang out.
I love that. I love that image of someone who's so engaged in the noise of even being in a stadium, right? And then in a really busy city. And the place that you found peace and tranquility was filled with beautiful art, which is cool. It's a cool realization how important the arts are, friends.
Where I saw my first Van Gogh and it blew my mind.
I have Van Gogh on my shirt. It's right there.
What?
I wondered why you were kind of pointing at your chest, and I was like, where
yeah.
is this gonna go?
I just seen your microphone though.
There he is.
So one of the reasons, there's a kind of two things that as I was thinking about why it would be so cool to speak to you guys. And one of them was, this has been an incredible year and a half, almost two, of, this, we call health workers heroes and all this sort of stuff. And both of you are kind of on the beginning end of this career in healthcare. And I have been overwhelmed with, even though you guys have gone through one of the hardest seasons of doing this job, you still love it. And so I find that so inspiring that you made space for something. So I'd love to start with, what has it been like to be either pursuing the healthcare profession or in the healthcare profession during this time? And expletives are fine.
And go Crystal.
Yeah, I honestly don't know even where to start. Like in the beginning, it was scary, and it was crying every day, and there was a lot of cursing, and there was a lot of what the hell am I doing, and why the hell are we doing, like nobody knows what's going on. Like doctors didn't even know what orders to put in, and people were just dying. Like it was a lot. And I think add like the political turmoil and the like all the polarization of mask wearing and just everything, and like being in the midst of all that was a lot. And I for the first time had to start on antidepressants in my life, and my therapist is working overtime. Yeah, it's been a busy, crazy year. I feel like there is some light at the end of the tunnel, although I will say like the numbers at my hospital are slowly creeping back up. My last shift that I worked, we lost 3 COVID patients like back to back. So it's still not over.
Right.
But I feel like there are strategies in place. Like the vaccination is definitely helping. The average age of the person that's dying from COVID is 15 years younger, since the older people were vaccinated first. So that's like a good sign that the vaccination is in fact working. Obviously it's not great that younger people are getting it now, but I think as the vaccination continues to get out there, that will help a lot. But yeah, sorry, that was my little PSA.
Go get back. Well, don't worry. I think like Josie and I say at least once an episode for the last month and a half, go get your vaccinations.
Please.
Yeah. So, I don't really have words to describe what it's been like. It was kind of like living a nightmare for a while. And then, add that to like, I had, my cousin and my uncle die from COVID. My cousin, who was like a perfectly healthy 45-year-old man. And then my uncle both die of COVID. And it's interesting because like, as a brown person, like my family is more affected than like, that's just how it is. Right. That like, like Latino and African-American people are far more affected by COVID than white folks. And so like, I don't have other coworkers generally that lost family to COVID. And in the midst of it, I lost 2 while like, I don't know. It was just a very strange situation. And again, my therapist was working overtime because I was just like, she's like, your whole life is like blowing up right now. I'm like, I know, I don't know, like, I don't know. So it's been a lot. I still love nursing. Like I've seen the best and the worst of it, and I still love it. And I wish I would have discovered it at a much younger age.
Well, we're going to get into that for sure in a minute, because I think this idea that you have to know what you're doing and why at a young age is, I think, for me anyway, it held me in a place of thinking I need to stay within the thing that I already started and go in that. And it has been really inspiring that even in the midst of what you say, your whole life is falling apart, it feels like there's still been this sense of like, no, this is the thing. And when I'm sitting in that, what that feels like. And then John, you you started, talk a little bit about how you got into this healthcare profession in just the last couple of years.
Wow. How did I start? I guess to start that, you got to go all the way back to college.
Yeah.
The first time. So when I was in college the first time, I initially wanted everything to do with law because that's all my high school was geared towards law. I thought it was great. I wanted to be an FBI agent. And I saw the movie Donnie Brasco and said, I never want to work for a company that would do that to their people.
There's that. And then like, how the hell are you going to be undercover?
Oh, I'm sneaky.
I feel like a lot of FBI agents are giant.
That giant?
You look at those Secret Service people and they're just like, they're FBI
That's
agents.
fair. Sorry, John. I didn't mean to be a heightist.
You were a heightist, and that was not making a good space for me.
Okay, thank you. Keep going.
Ouch.
It's fair. It's fair. Everything's fair.
I feel targeted, triggered, and hurt. Mostly hurt.
Okay, so in college, you were studying law.
And then I can't remember what it was, but then decided I wanted to be a doctor. That was what I wanted to do. And then that didn't work with sports. So I said, oh, we'll put that aside, go pursue basketball, come back. And I'm like 27 years old. And I think I'm too old to go back to school.
That's right. Because we met when you were 27.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're 2 years older than me. That's right.
Yeah, so I thought I was too old to go back to school. So try a few different things, end up in the automotive industry, selling car wax, wash, body shop type products, and just stick with it for way too long. And then was not happy for years, knew I needed to make a change, but I'm like, what do I do? Basically, I'm qualified for sales now. So what do I want to go sell? And I'm good at sales, but I'm not like the rah sales guy that companies like. I'm not like motivated by numbers. I'm motivated by helping people. But I didn't realize that until I kept coming across these car accidents and things where people,
not because you were causing them, you were literally coming across them.
Randomly. Wink. And I could never help, and it bothered me. And then I was like, well, maybe I need to get my first responder or EMT, but taking a class was out of the question because I traveled for work all the time. And I called this really wise, brilliant, smart woman, very insightful. Her name is Crystal Steckel.
Right.
Some of you have heard of her. And she said, you want to make a change, why not go into nursing? And I never thought of it. And I don't know why I'd never thought of it. Probably the gender stereotypes. I just don't think of a male nurse. So I never thought of myself as a nurse. And then I think I asked you to describe everything about the job that you loved and hated. And it checked off every box that I wanted in a career. And
It's
so then I called.
Fascinating. What? You call people, like if I tell people what you're doing, it's really fascinating how many people go, yeah, I can see him doing it. Like there hasn't been the reaction I think you thought at first people would be like, what?
And none of those assholes had the guts to tell me, except Crystal Steckel. But yeah, so then I called every nurse I knew and asked them the same questions. And I didn't get one person that said, maybe you shouldn't do that. I was expecting a few. So yeah, I quit my job, enrolled in school, and now I'm poor.
Do you mind telling us what age you were when you did that?
I was 43. Wait, no.
No, you're 42.
42. I'm 43 now.
Yeah.
Sounds like I was 47. Oh, wait.
Well, you're not 47 yet. You're making it more dramatic than it was.
137 years old.
For those of you who are biblical nerds, John often gets told he's a Nephilim, so he could be 137. Who knows?
I am, and I am. Highlander was loosely based on my life.
Crystal, do
Oh
you
my
mind
gosh.
sharing how you got into this field? How you made decided that this was the space that you were gonna? Because you also had like several careers. When I met you, you were in one career, and I would argue careers that a lot of people thought, oh, you're doing good work. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I also was a pre-med student in my first degree.
Same. Is that why we're friends? All of us.
All of us, yeah. And decided that was too long to be in school.
Ironic.
I have attention issues. I'm a bit of a, I'm all over the place. And so being in school that long just felt like too much. And so I got my dual bachelor's in biology and chemistry, and then just started doing volunteer stuff right at first, and hustling. So I did mission year right out of college, which is like a inner city volunteer program. And I actually worked at a health clinic for my volunteer site. I was an interpreter because the clinic mostly served Latino women who were pregnant. And none of the OBGYNs spoke Spanish. And so I was their interpreter and kind of medical assistant, just as a volunteer, which is crazy. So I did that for a year. And I actually really loved like the medical setting, even though it was a clinic. I just love like the connection with the people, and I love the idea of giving access to people who didn't have access to healthcare. Like that was very exciting for me. But at the time I was just like, I don't know how this will fit into my life. Like at some point it'll fit into my life. I don't know how now.
That's important, I think, as people think about like figuring out what space they belong in, is like all of it played into it later,
Right. So right out of mission year, I just kind of did a bunch of like community development type stuff, and eventually got into working with immigrants and refugees. Like I worked for an organization that did refugee resettlement, as well as immigration stuff. And I did that for a while. I also dabbled in education for a little while, but came back to like refugee and immigrant stuff. And while doing that, I realized that healthcare was almost null and void for refugees and immigrants because they just didn't understand access in the US. And like they would just go to the ER for any little like thing that you would just go to your like primary practitioner for or whatever. So I started thinking about nursing. At that point, I had a couple of friends that were nurses, and they were like, yeah, that's like the perfect career for you. Like you can help people, you can like use your scientific mind, you can, like whatever. And I had also just gone through a divorce. I don't know if we can say going through, I just got abandoned by my husband.
Yeah, it was. I was going to say, going through a divorce implicates that any of us knew it was happening. Yeah. I would say he had some difficulties that none of us really knew about. You in particular didn't know about, I guess. Yeah. And you showed up to him leaving.
Yes. So I was trying to scramble, like, so the other thing is like the immigrant and refugee stuff, like there was always money issues, right? We're always like petitioning for money and whatever. And the day after my husband left me, I found out that my job was getting cut in half. And so like I was going half time now, trying to survive on my own. Like, so I think I just was in like a scrambling sort of position, and discovered like the option of nursing school, that there was a bachelor's program that I could do in 15 months to get my bachelor's of nursing. and I had to apply like the very next day or something. Like, it was crazy. And so I did. I just like jumped right in, just all in, applied. Had to start taking my prereqs like right away the next week. And actually did not even get into the courses because they were already full. One of my friends who was a nurse, he was like, just show up to class. They'll let you in eventually. So I just started showing up and showing up and showing up. And finally, like 4 weeks in or whatever, the professor was like, okay, I put you on it. I put you on our like agenda or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but yeah.
This is
so
not
I
part of the
got
story that I knew. I love this.
Oh yeah. So I got into the class just by being annoying, basically. Persistence, guys.
I wish Josie's face was so good. She's like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So I just kept showing up, got into the class, and actually applied for nursing school. Didn't get in right away, but again, was just like, you know what? I'm getting in because this is what I'm supposed to do. I made it through the interview, and it was like a day-long interview. It was like this whole thing. And then the immigrant and refugee place I was working at was doing like a little clinic for farm workers. So we were doing like, we had student volunteers from OHSU, the nursing school I had applied to, come and like do like blood sugar and cholesterol and all that for farm workers. And one of the professors that came with the students was one of the people that interviewed me. And so I went over and I was like, hi, introduced myself. And she was like, oh, so you'll be starting our program this fall, right? And I was like, well, no, I didn't get in. I got waitlisted. And she was like, oh, you did? Well, we'll see about that.
I have goosebumps. I didn't know this part of the story.
Yeah. And then the next day I got called and said I was accepted into the program. So yeah. Yeah. It all worked out the way it was supposed to.
Come talk to some people for me?
Yeah, seriously, John's trying to get in right now. Can you?
You got it this weekend. It's happening. How old was I? Was I? I was.
Don't ask John.
17. I was 35.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we have this like perception, I think, in culture that like 22 or 25, like between 22 and 25, you're supposed to figure out what your destiny is. And as two of my very best friends, you know that all of us have been on this like roller coaster of who am I supposed to be? What's my meaning? And like I said, it was Josie and I were thinking about who do we want to invite on for Space Makers. It just clicked with me that like both of you are people who post 35 have created a life that is in some ways super altruistic, but also is deeply rooted in your own feeling like this is a connection that I have to my deep self, to who I really am. Like the interesting thing is the number of people who have said to both of you, like, oh, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, right? And they just they know, right? And I think for a lot of us, we think, again, we have to know what that is very early on in life. Now, Josie, you just applied and got into school to get your master's in art, modern art, right?
Yes, modern art history.
Right.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Hence the t-shirt.
That's how she's planning to teach other people later. So this is, if you'll notice my belly button, it represents. Did you have fear just stepping into that, that it was later? I mean, because you're younger, but you're not, 21. Did you have that fear as well that like, oh, this is, or have you always known you're going to do something, make a move later?
No, I weirdly enough don't have fear of change. I've had a lot of change in my life and I have no fear of starting over. That's kind of, I mean, in art, you kind of are always starting over, whether it be a new style or a new venture or something new. But even outside of that, I went into school thinking I was going to be a business person, business major.
Business person. I'm going to be a business person.
Because I'm really like, as much as I am an artist, I'm also very analytical and very strategically minded. Numbers and all that stuff come very naturally to me. I've always been very good at school. I just don't like certain things. Like science, I was very good at, but I didn't want to do it, so I didn't. And so I had to retake chemistry in high school. That's very much my mentality. So starting over has never been kind of weird. I've always known I was going to go to grad school. I assume I'm going to go again after this one, and then again probably after that, because I'm always in the pursuit of knowledge and new things. So yeah, I mean, it's very inspiring to hear all of your stories and to know that the trajectory can change.
Yeah,
I'm
I
very
have to
open to
say,
it.
as I think about the three of you, people who are in my life, see, this is when you like selfishly just interview people that you want to talk to, but there is this lack of fear of change. Now, Crystal, you were pushed into it a little bit more. It's not like you were like, I'm going to change everything. You literally, your life in a week, I'll never forget that week. But that week, everything just went to shit. And you
Blew
were,
up time.
yeah. But the thing that I have noticed with you out of that is that you don't fear it as much anymore. And you've had some pretty dramatic in the last couple of years shifts and changes. Do you think having had that experience of everything falling apart and not knowing the outcome, yet you just kept showing up and then it worked out, do you think that has like formed that lack of fear of change, or do you think you were always just not change averse?
I think I've not really had much issue with change in my life, because as a kid too, there was a lot of like change all the time, and I think I just got used to it. And I almost like crave change sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even before my divorce and everything, I like lived in however many different states. Like I just moved around a
And
lot.
countries.
Yeah, and countries. I was just all over the place, right? Like that's just always been kind of how I am. And I think that crave for change, it feels like change you always learn and you grow, and like, yeah, like you learn about a new part of the country and you learn about new people and you learn about, so I think like part of that is driven by like learning. I think I'm just a different kind of learner. Like I'm a kinesthetic learner. And so I need to like be doing something to learn. And so I think that's part of it. And I don't know. I think I just grew up where there was like always change. And so it just is part of life, like for me, it's just whatever. I don't know.
What about you, John? Because you've lived a couple lifetimes in the 43 years you've been alive. I mean, and some pretty like you've lived some lives that people would dream of, right? Being a professional athlete, getting to go to all the fancy car shows. I didn't know this was such a thing until I told some of my guy friends, oh, my best guy friend John can't come. He's at SEMA. And they're like, he's where? And apparently like, so you've been at the top of that field. Do you think you've always been not afraid of change? Because you come from a family that has had, is pretty like down to...
My dad does not change.
No.
He is very averse to change. He is very much, you can't make me change. Try.
Right. It's true.
That's my dad. My mom's not been afraid of change. She's adapted to wherever, my dad's a pastor, so wherever that we went, she adapted and figured out how she worked there or whatever. So she's adapted. But I don't think I've ever been afraid of change. I'm always, okay, yeah. Like people are like, how'd you end up in Utah? Well, there seemed to be a good school. I knew some friends that lived in this town and I'd never lived in Utah. So why not?
Yeah, I love that openness to life that I think all three of you have. I am I'm a change averse human. Although I have done the changes because I feel like I've been invited into them. But it wasn't John, you're the one who one time I was panicking and you're like, Sarah, you hate change. And I was like, no, I don't. You're like, no, you do. You allow change to happen, but you hate it. And I think for me, I have such an emotional, I think
I'm wise.
you really are. You really are. But I want to know the thing that I think is so helpful for folks as they process. Maybe they won't make a radical change to go into medical care or to go back to school in a field that, whatever. What keeps you guys rooted as you're making this space for yourself? So I'm thinking about Crystal, as you know, you're moving to another country for a little while. John, as you're moving to Utah. Josie, as you're starting a new program that, you don't know all the people yet. You don't know what do you guys feel like are your grounding, or like the things that like say, this is the way that I hold space for myself in these changes? Like, how do you stay rooted in it? Does that question make sense?
Yeah,
oh,
totally.
Cool.
Well, then you answer it. Fine.
I think for me, it's my people. Like even though I've moved and lived a lot of places, there are people that have been staples in my life, like you and John and Gabby. And I have a friend in Atlanta, and, like I have like my core group of people that know me. They've known me through all my changes, through my ups and my downs. And I know I can call any one of them when I'm struggling or need to process or whatever. I can jump on a plane and go see them, so yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. That, and then like outdoor spaces for me. Like I just need to get outside sometimes, and that helps recenter me and ground me.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Because it's all of a sudden like you're like, oh, wait a minute, the world is huge and changing.
Right.
And that's, I think, been a little bit hard for us over the last year for people, is like our normal practices of being able to move around and change. You've been in the same room, and I'm like, do I not like what I'm doing, or just not like my living room? I love my living room, but that's like, so my friend said that the other day, like, I thought I wanted to quit my job. It turns out I just don't want to be in my living room anymore. That's like, that's fair. What about you, John or Josie? What about you guys? Are there like, how do you stay grounded in the midst of change?
That's not my name, number one. You can call me by my proper name.
Oh, tall pockets. No, what was it? Hot
pockets.
High pockets.
And rolling your eyes at me that's not nice.
Mm-hmm.
My people, for sure. That's 100%. People staying in contact with people, your friends. Traveling for work with my last job let me keep those relationships strong, because I got to see people all over the country all the time, so that helped. Your people always keep you grounded. And then for me, it was I just try to keep the mindset of, if this just all goes to shit, you can go back to where you were. Like, I can always go back to the automotive world, and even if my company didn't accept me back, which they probably would, there's a million other companies that I could go work for that I have relationships with. I was like, I could go back to that. Was I satisfied and fulfilled? No, but I'd make money until I figure out what to do next. I know that I have endless amounts of people that would let me crash in a spare room or on a couch until I got my feet back under me. So that's the other thing, is there's a giant safety net of your people underneath you, and go try it. If it doesn't work, fine. Yeah, that didn't work. Go try something else. So, and that was a big fear for me. That was probably my biggest fear, was I didn't know if my brain would function enough to learn.
We should, yeah. Part of the story of John, again, these are three of the most inspiring people I know, but John has had massive, what do we want to call it, brain trauma from having a lot of concussions from being a pro athlete. And then he, as much as we joked about car accidents earlier, he has been in several car accidents. Not his fault either. Trampoline. He's hit his head on fans. 6'9.5". You get hit in the head a lot. But we, as a friend group, went through John's personality changing. I'm not thinking, nurses, help me. What is the term for concussion. What do you have?
Well, I
TBI.
would have I had persistent post-concussive syndrome was the diagnosis. So
Right.
there's post-concussive syndrome, and then if it lasts for a long time, it becomes persistent post-concussive syndrome. But it's a TBI, yes.
And so John, who, as much as we joke around, is a very intelligent human, lost the ability sometimes to even be able to look at a computer for very long because it would put you into massive headache or even personality change. And then you had to take a lot of steps to kind of reclaim your health and your own mental stability, from doing odd things like a hyperbaric chamber to learning how to just be in the world a little bit different and set boundaries in a way around being in front of a computer, or even travel, realizing the altitude and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't just the easy, like, I'm going to change my life. It was the question of, can my brain do it?
Yeah. Because my memory was an issue. That was a big issue. I had no short-term memory. So keeping information in my head was not easy, but it worked.
And your brain killed it.
Yeah, you're doing
Thank you, Groom family, Sarah and Craig Groom,
My
generously let me use their hyperbaric chamber. And I will say this, they saved my life.
Yeah, we are so grateful. What about you, Josie, when everything is in the midst of change? Even I'm laughing because the noise people hear in the background is literally Josie's place being worked on. So she's got all these, not where she is right now, but where she's moving. And there's like the boxes in the background. So clearly there's a lot of change. How do you stay grounded when everything seems to be changing?
Yeah. This is kind of different than everybody else, but I stay grounded in myself. I had a recovered memory just during this conversation, but I went to lots of therapy as a kid, and I remember talking to the therapist of why I was so scared of change as a child. And a lot of it was, I was had a massive fear of being deported with my family, and that's like this huge change that was threatening and all looming. And then as soon as I feel like my dad and I were able to get the papers for all of us to stay or whatever, after that I felt like invincible. And my home life was terrible and everything was bad, but I was like, well, at least I got myself or whatever. I've always like been willing to succeed. I've always been willing to do this or do that, or everything will all work out. And I mean, I have a partner now, and as much as I love him and know that he's probably going to stick around forever, I know that if he decides to leave, or if, God forbid, he were to pass away, I'd be all right, because I would have myself and my resilience and my persistence. And kind of like how you all said, if the whole world falls apart, if my whole life is gone and everything, I have no money or whatever, I know that I have people that I can depend on, and that I probably always will, even if those pockets and groups of people change. And I also have this overwhelming fear of death. So I always think, well, as long as I'm not dead, I guess things will be all right.
Don't worry, as you get older, it really changes. You're like, death it's looming. Just kidding. The three of us have gone through the weirdest thing, Josie, this year, where we're starting to see our gray hair a lot.
Oh, me too. I've had gray hair since I was 15. I don't know if you could see it all in there.
You guys all have flourishing hair, but it's an interesting thing to realize that we're aging, and what does that mean and what does that look like? And I think this inspiring ability to look change in the face and say, okay, part of that, I think, is being able to say, what if the worst happens? Like all three of you said, what if the worst happens? And then not stopping there. I think for those of us who are change averse, we stop with that question instead of going, okay, what if the worst happens? Well, these people are still in my life. It's kind of like that grounding practice of this thing and this thing. My friend the other day said that his fear is like the nerdy version of himself with a clipboard running behind him going, excuse me, excuse me. And if you just ignore that thing, it just gets worse and starts yelling more like, excuse me. But if you turn around and say yes, and then your nerdy self with the clipboard goes, if you do this, all of these things could happen. And if you just look at him and go, I know. Then he goes, okay, great. Like he just needs you to know. And he said, sometimes, Sarah, you just have to turn around and look your nerdy self in the face and say, I know. And that's, I think, the the idea even of like grounding and rooting ourselves in our friends, because they say, yeah, even if all of that happens, because I panic, right? This morning I woke up with the, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I literally own an Airstream that only has an air conditioner that works and there's no electricity. So it's just a air conditioner. And it's, whatever, but it is the space that I can imagine. And I'm grateful for the way all of you guys are willing to be bold and brave and help maybe inspire other people, because I got to tell you, it's so, John had his first CNA shift, 4 days ago, 5 days ago? I can't
Maybe
remember.
5.
Yeah. And your joy, you're like, I did the worst stuff and it was awesome. Like, he was so excited.
So much shit.
Yeah, literally.
All of them. It was like everybody's laxatives just worked right as I came on, and it was just, oh.
By the way, growing up in a medical family and then having all my friends be in the medical field, the number of times, last time I was visiting Crystal, I stayed a little bit later so that all of my friends coming off shift, we could have breakfast. So here I am eating this like breakfast, and I've got some feelings inside because I'm leaving some of my best friends. They all sit down and they're like, there was so much shit last night. And like, it was like, and I'm just eating and I'm like, this is not usual, but this is usual for us and for me.
I was getting a few more shots yesterday, and the nurse giving me my shots, we were talking about it, and she's like, yeah, she's like, I worked a shift not that long ago, and she's like, there was just shit, there was so much, and she's like, I just kept smelling it, I couldn't get the smell out, and I'm like, yes, it was like at 4:00 the next afternoon, that's all I could smell. And she's like, but then I looked down and realized I had shit all down my leg.
Guys, if you're going to make space for a job shift, like, you too can live in this glamour,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to finish by kind of posing the question, what is, you think about like space making for the new, space making for yourself, space making for dreams and passions. What is like one tangible thing people can do, like whether it's daily or just like a small shift that would help make space for themselves or others as they think about, making a change later or now? That was a big question.
It's a really big question. Crystal?
I think one thing that I've practiced for a while now that I find is super helpful, and it only takes 5 to 10 minutes a day, is I have a journal that is like a gratitude journal, or just like a what the fuck happened journal. Like I always write something I'm grateful for, no matter what, even if I have a what the fuck happened moment. But I also like process kind of through that. Again, it's like, yes, I have my friends that I process with, but I also process with myself. And one of the ways that I do that is through writing. And so I think that is one thing that I try to make space for almost daily. Not always, obviously, but like most days I make space for it because I feel like it's important for me to like get it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then be able to reflect on it later. So
I love that. John, what about you? What's a suggestion you would have, even if it's just like a mindset or?
I sit in the bottom of my shower and have a good cry.
You're so full of it.
Gosh, honestly, I don't have anything that's like structured like that. Like, I just fake it. And that's probably not good to say. Yeah, just trying to think about what I do. I'm constantly overthinking, but I break stuff down. Like, I'm always breaking down like what would be in a journal in my own head, having a conversation with myself. I have very elaborate conversations with myself. But I think the biggest thing, I just give myself just the mentality and the mental space to just say, if it's a bad day or if it's a bad test or if it's a bad class or whatever it is, it's okay. Like, The biggest thing for me is the mindset of that I'm on a bonus life.
Yeah.
So with my head injuries, and obviously don't go get head injuries so you can have this disclaimer. But I was suicidal. And now I'm like, I was fortunate to be snapped out of it every time. And now I'm like, I have this extra life. This is all extra now to me, you know, getting the hyperbaric and my brain being healed. Like that, this has created an extra life for me. So, however, like you can have that mindset that you're all, you know, you could die at any moment. It's bonus. We're all in bonus time. So
I love that.
Don't hold yourself back. When you have that bonus time, it's that time to say, I get to do whatever I want to do. I get to try the things I always wanted to try. And I don't have to apologize for it because it's my bonus time. So it literally is my bonus time. But I think you can have that mentality in your life and just say, hey, now's the time. Everyone has their bucket list. Well, fuck it. Do your bucket list.
Bucket.
Yeah.
Bucket list.
Just go do it and give yourself that permission. A lot of people, you find a million reasons not to do something. You've got responsibilities. You have this, you have this. That's all bullshit. That's all just constructed stuff. Maybe some of it's not, you know, maybe you have a family, you got to feed kids or whatever, but there's ways to do it. Make it happen. I don't know. And then
I love
journal.
that.
Yeah. I need to be better about doing like actual things.
Like
I'm gonna
journaling.
start today, Crystal Steckel, following in your footsteps.
Oh my gosh. Guys, it has been so fun to have you. This is like what people want to know what like my nightly practice is. It's talking to these two or my other friend. And I feel like there's this sense where if you are like me and you are risk averse and change averse, the only way you're ever going to live a life that makes space for all of that is to have people in your life who are like, what? Nah, who kind of give you a different mindset around it. So I'm grateful to both of you, especially as I'm about to go through some major changes in 7 weeks, friends. 7 weeks. It is great to have people like you to walk alongside me and constantly remind me that now is the time. Josie, well, first of all, are either of you got anything you want to promote, ways that people can follow you, things that you want people to follow? You know, you're both nursing humans, so I don't think you're going to really want people to follow the hospitals that you're involved in.
The hospital would appreciate me not saying it. They don't want to be tied to me.
The only promotion I have is wear your mask, get a vaccination.
Yes.
What I got.
If you want to find Crystal on social media for some pretty great hot takes, and also John as well. And John is just if you and John become social media friends, he's a generous liker. He loves to like things.
There's some things I don't though. There's some things I'll look at it and be like, nah, I don't want to like that. But if I really like it, I'm gonna love it. So
for those of you who are
that's the real like.
For those of you who are Enneagram people, John is an Enneagram 7 and no one is surprised. Josie, where can folks find us and the work that we're doing right now?
Yeah, you can find us on makingspacesPodcast.com for all of the things, or Making Spaces Podcast on Instagram. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever people say. Yeah.
And
you can find...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you can find me at Josie Takes the World, and you can find Sarah at Sarah Heath on
That's
Instagram.
Right. That's true. Instagram, all the things. And we will see you next week where we will be
saving a space for you. Bye.
I'm going to hit record.